My name is Tyler Brennan, and I've been a forest patrol officer for the Monongahela National Forest in West Virginia for 8 years. Most people don't know what a forest patrol officer does. We're not rangers exactly, though we do some of the same work. We're not law enforcement, though we have some authority. We're somewhere in between. We enforce park regulations, assist lost hikers, monitor wildlife, maintain trails, and respond to emergencies. It's a good job if you like being alone, and I do. Or at least, I used to. This happened last year, Christmas night, 2023. I was on duty because I'd volunteered to cover the holiday shift. I'm not married, no kids, and my parents had passed a few years back. Christmas didn't mean much to me anymore, and I figured I'd let the other officers spend the time with their families. The Monongahela covers almost 1 million acres, and our district office is responsible for the eastern section, around the Spruce Knob area. It's beautiful country. High elevation, dense forest, steep terrain. It's also remote. Cell service is spotty at best, and in the winter, when the snow piles up and the roads ice over, it can take hours to reach someone in trouble. I was stationed at the Seneca Creek Ranger Station, a small outpost about 15 miles south of Elkins. It's a single-story building with an office, a kitchenette, a bathroom, and a bunk room for overnight stays. There's a radio system that connects to the main dispatch in Elkins, and a landline phone that barely works. Most of the time, we rely on the radio. That night, I was alone. The station was quiet. I'd spent the evening reading a paperback and drinking instant coffee, listening to the wind howl outside. The temperature had dropped to the low 20s, and the forecast called for more snow overnight. The station had been built in the 1960s, back when the Forest Service had more funding and more personnel. The walls were thin, the insulation was terrible, and the heating system rattled like it was trying to shake itself apart. I'd brought a space heater from home and positioned it near my desk, but it barely made a dent in the cold. The windows were old, single-pane glass, and frost had formed on the inside corners in delicate crystalline patterns. Every time the wind gusted, the whole building creaked and groaned like an old ship at sea. I'd made myself a sandwich around 8, turkey and Swiss on wheat bread that had started to go stale. I ate it while watching the snow fall outside, thick flakes drifting down through the yellow glow of the security light mounted on the corner of the building. The parking lot was empty except for my truck, a Forest Service green Chevy Silverado with all-terrain tires and a light bar on the roof. I'd already checked the weather radar on the computer. The snow was supposed to continue through the night, tapering off around dawn. Accumulation estimates were between 6 and 8 inches. At 11:47, the radio crackled to life. It was dispatch, a woman named Carol, who I'd worked with before. She sounded stressed, her voice tight with the kind of tension that comes from dealing with too many calls and not enough resources. "Tyler, we've got a 911 call reporting a missing person in your area. Adult male, mid-30s. Last seen on the Huckleberry Trail around 8 this evening. Caller is the subject's wife. She says he went out for a walk and never came back." I grabbed a pen and pulled a notepad toward me. Name: Andrew Killian, staying at a cabin rental off Forest Road 29. Wife's name is Sarah Killian. She's at the cabin now, pretty upset. Says this isn't like him at all. What was he doing out there? She says he wanted to see the stars. Clear night before the snow started. Figured it'd be nice. He took a flashlight and his phone. Told her he'd be back in 30 minutes. That was over 3 hours ago. I frowned and checked the clock. It was nearly midnight now. 3 hours in these conditions, even for an experienced hiker, was bad news. The temperature was still dropping, and the wind chill was pushing it down into the single digits. Hypothermia could set in fast. Any idea which direction he went? She says he headed north from the cabin. She tried calling his phone multiple times, but it goes straight to voicemail. Battery might be dead, or he could be out of range. She's worried he's hurt. Says he mentioned wanting to get a good view of the Milky Way, so he probably went uphill. I'll head out there. Give me the address of the cabin. Carol relayed the information, and I copied it down. Forest Road. 29 was about 6 miles west of the station, branching off from County Route 14. The cabin would be another mile or so down that forest road. I told her I'd check in once I reached the cabin, and then I started gearing up. Heavy insulated coat with the Forest Service patch on the shoulder. Insulated gloves with grip palms. Wool hat under my ranger hat. Headlamp with fresh batteries, plus 2 spares in my pocket. Handheld radio clipped to my belt, GPS unit, first aid kit with thermal blankets, heat packs, and basic trauma supplies, emergency flares, a thermos of hot coffee, and my sidearm, a Glock 22, which I carried in a hip holster under my coat. I didn't carry the gun for people. In 8 years, I'd never had to draw it on another human being. I carried it for black bears, which were common in the Monongahela, and for the occasional aggressive dog that wandered up from the surrounding communities. But it was Christmas night, late, and the odds of encountering trouble were low. Still, I checked the magazine and the chamber before holstering it. Better to have it and not need it than the other way around. I grabbed my pack and headed out to the truck. The cold hit me like a slap, stealing my breath for a moment. The snow was falling steadily, already covering the parking lot in a fresh white layer. Brushed off the windshield and climbed into the cab, starting the engine and letting it idle while I programmed the GPS. The cabin's coordinates came up on the screen, a little green dot in the middle of a sea of contour lines indicating steep terrain. The drive took 25 minutes. The roads were icy, and I had to take it slow, even with 4-wheel drive engaged. County Route 14 was a narrow 2-lane road that wound through the forest, hemmed in on both sides by dense stands of red spruce and eastern hemlock. The snowplows wouldn't be out until morning, and the road was already getting slippery. I passed a few darkened houses, their windows black and lifeless, smoke rising from chimneys in thin gray columns. Most people had the good sense to stay inside on a night like this. Forest Road 29 was even worse. It was a dirt track that had been graded sometime in the fall, but now it was covered in snow and ice, barely wide enough for one vehicle. The trees closed in overhead, their branches heavy with snow, creating a tunnel effect. My headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the swirling flakes and the narrow track ahead. I could feel the truck sliding occasionally, the tires struggling for purchase on the slick surface. The cabin appeared after another mile, a small A-frame structure with a steeply pitched metal roof and a stone chimney. It was set back from the road about 50 feet, accessible by a short driveway that had been recently plowed. Smoke was rising from the chimney, and warm yellow light glowed from the windows. I parked next to a silver Honda CR-V, its roof and hood covered in snow, and got out. The cabin looked like it belonged in a postcard. It was the kind of place that people rented for romantic getaways or family vacations. There was a small porch with a wooden railing, and I could see a wreath hanging on the front door, decorated with red ribbons and pine cones. Under different circumstances, it would have been idyllic, but knowing that someone was missing out in the cold turned it into something else, a place of fear and worry. Sarah Killian met me at the door before I could knock. She'd clearly been watching from the window. She was in her early 30s, dark hair pulled into a ponytail, wearing a thick, cream-colored sweater and jeans. Her face was pale, and her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She had a tissue clutched in one hand. "Thank God you're here," she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know who else to call. I tried looking for him myself, but it's so dark, and I couldn't see anything, and I thought if I got lost too, then what would happen? "I'm Officer Brennan," I said, keeping my voice calm and steady. "I'm here to help. Can you tell me exactly what happened? Start from the beginning and give me as much detail as you can." She nodded and stepped back to let me inside. The cabin was warm, almost too warm after the cold outside. A fire was crackling in the stone fireplace, and I could smell wood smoke and something else, maybe mulled wine or cider. The interior was open concept, with a small kitchen area, a living room with comfortable furniture, and a loft accessible by a wooden ladder. There was a small Christmas tree in the corner next to the fireplace, decorated with lights and ornaments, and topped with a silver star. Presents wrapped in colorful paper sat underneath it. A half-empty bottle of red wine sat on the coffee table, next to 2 glasses, one still half full. It looked like they'd been having a nice evening before everything went wrong. "We got here this afternoon around 3, Sarah said, wrapping her arms around herself. "It was supposed to be a getaway, just the 2 of us. We've been married for 6 years, and we're both so busy with work that we never get time alone anymore. So we booked this place for 3 nights. No work, no phones, except for emergencies. Just a quiet Christmas together." Andrew loves hiking. He grew up in Colorado, and he's always outside when he can be. So after we had dinner, around 7:30, he said he wanted to go for a walk. He'd seen on the map that there was a trail that led up to a ridge, and he thought it would be a good place to see the stars. "The Huckleberry Trail," I said. "Yes." I told him it was too dark, that it was dangerous to go out at night, but he insisted. He said he'd just walk up the trail a little ways, find a clearing, look at the stars for a bit, and come back. He promised me he'd be back in 30 minutes, 45 at the most. He took his flashlight and his phone. I stayed here. I drank some wine, read a book, kept the fire going. I thought he'd be back any minute. "What time did he leave?" "Around 8. I remember checking the clock when he went out. And then I got lost in my book, and when I looked up again, it was 9. I thought that was odd, but I figured maybe he'd found a really good spot and was taking his time. But then 9:30 came, then 10. I started calling his phone, but it would just ring once and go to voicemail. I thought maybe the battery died, or maybe he was out of range, but I was starting to get worried. So I put on my coat and went outside with a flashlight, and I called his name. I walked up the trail a little ways, but I couldn't see anything, and it was so dark and so cold, and I started panicking. I thought, what if he fell and broke his leg? What if he's lying out there freezing to death? So I came back and called 911. What was he wearing? A dark blue winter jacket, North Face, I think, black hiking pants, brown hiking boots, a gray knit hat, gloves. He was dressed for the cold. Did he have any other gear? A pack, water, food? No, just the flashlight and his phone. He said he'd only be gone for half an hour, so he didn't think he'd need anything else. Did he say anything before he left? Was he upset, acting strange, anything unusual? She shook her head. No, he seemed fine, happy even. We'd been drinking a little wine, but not enough to make him disoriented or impair his judgment. He was just excited to see the stars. He kept saying how clear the sky was, how you could see the Milky Way out here because there's no light pollution. Has he ever done anything like this before? Gone for a hike and lost track of time? No, never. Andrew's very responsible. If he says he'll be back in 30 minutes, he's back in 30 minutes. That's why I'm so scared. This isn't like him at all. I made notes on my pad. Okay, I need you to show me where the trail starts, and then I need you to stay here. If he comes back, I need you to call dispatch immediately and let them know. Can you do that? She nodded. Yes, please find him. I'm going to do everything I can. She led me through the cabin to the back door, which opened onto a small wooden deck overlooking the forest. There was a propane grill covered in snow and a pair of snow-covered chairs. She pointed to a narrow path that disappeared into the trees about 20 yards from the deck. That's the Huckleberry Trail. He went that way. I clicked on my headlamp and stepped off the deck, trudging through the snow toward the trailhead. The snow was about 4 inches deep here, maybe a little more in the drifts. I could see fresh boot prints leading north, clearly defined, the treads visible in the snow. Andrew's prints. They were evenly spaced, showing a steady walking pace, no signs of stumbling or hesitation. He'd been walking with purpose, confident in his direction. I followed the prints for about 50 yards. The trail climbed gently through the trees, winding between thick trunks and snow-covered boulders. The forest was silent except for the soft whisper of falling snow and the occasional crack of a branch breaking under the weight of ice. My headlamp illuminated the scene in harsh, white light, throwing stark shadows across the snow. And then the prints just stopped, not at a fallen log, not at a creek crossing, not at a junction with another trail. They just stopped, in the middle of the path, like Andrew had taken one more step and ceased to exist. I stopped and stared at the spot where the prints ended. It didn't make sense. I crouched down, examining the snow carefully. There were no signs of a struggle, no drag marks, no other prints, no indication that he'd stepped off the trail to the left or right. The snow on either side of the path was undisturbed, smooth, and unbroken. It was like he'd simply vanished into thin air. I stood up and scanned the area with my headlamp, turning slowly in a full circle. The trees pressed in close, their branches heavy with snow. The forest seemed to absorb sound, creating a muffled, claustrophobic atmosphere. I called out his name. Andrew! Andrew Killian! Can you hear me? The wind carried my voice away. No response, just the silence and the falling snow. I keyed my radio. Carol, I'm at the cabin. I found the subject's tracks heading north on the Huckleberry Trail, but they stop about 50 yards in. No sign of him after that. No indication of where he went. I'm going to continue searching, but this doesn't look good. I might need backup. Copy that. I'll put in a request for search and rescue. Weather's supposed to get worse overnight, so they might not be able to deploy until morning. I'll keep you updated. Understood. I'll keep you posted. I continued up the trail, moving slowly, scanning the snow on either side for any indication that Andrew had left the path. But there was nothing. The snow was pristine, undisturbed. I walked another quarter mile, calling his name every few minutes, shining my light into the trees. The trail climbed steadily, switchbacking up the side of the ridge. The elevation gain was gradual but consistent, and I could feel my lungs working harder in the cold air. After about half a mile, I reached a small clearing where the trail leveled out briefly. The trees opened up, and I could see the sky above, thick with clouds now, the stars obscured. The snow was falling more heavily. I stopped and swept my light across the clearing. Nothing. No tracks. No sign of disturbance. I was about to move on when I noticed something at the edge of the clearing. A tree, a large eastern hemlock, with a strange mark on its trunk. I walked over to examine it. It was a carving. Old, weathered, but still visible. 3 parallel lines, cut deep into the bark, running vertically. Below the lines was a symbol that looked like a crude circle with a cross inside it. I'd seen marks like this before, old trailblazes or boundary markers from decades ago. But this one looked different, more deliberate, more intentional. I ran my gloved hand over the carving, feeling the rough bark and the smooth wood underneath where the knife had cut. I took a photo with my phone for reference, then continued up the trail. The wind was picking up now, and the temperature seemed to be dropping even further. My breath came out in thick, white clouds, and I could feel the cold seeping through my gloves. I'd been out here for maybe 20 minutes, and I was already starting to feel the effects. If Andrew had been out here for over 3 hours, dressed for a short walk, but not for an extended period in these conditions. He could be in serious trouble. The trail climbed higher, winding through a dense stand of spruce trees. The snow was deeper here, up to my shins in some places. The trees were so close together that their branches interlocked overhead, creating a canopy that blocked what little light there was. My headlamp was the only source of illumination, and it created a small bubble of visibility in an ocean of darkness. I reached a ridge after another half-mile and stopped to catch my breath. From here, the trail forked. One branch continued north along the ridge. The other descended east into a narrow valley. I checked my GPS, trying to orient myself. According to the map, the north trail led to a lookout point about a mile ahead, while the east trail descended into an area marked as Blackwater Hollow. Neither trail showed any recent foot traffic, at least not on the GPS data. I decided to check the north trail first, since Sarah had mentioned Andrew wanted to find a good view of the stars. The lookout point would be the logical destination. I followed the trail north, moving carefully on the icy surface. The wind was stronger up here on the ridge, cutting through my coat and making my eyes water. I pulled my scarf up over my nose and mouth, breathing through the fabric to warm the air before it hit my lungs. After another 10 minutes of hard climbing, I reached the lookout point. It was a rocky outcrop that jutted out from the ridge, offering a panoramic view of the valley below. During the day, it would have been spectacular. But now, in the dark and the snow, it was just a cold, windswept piece of stone. I swept my light across the area. No tracks, no sign that anyone had been here recently. The snow was undisturbed. I stood at the edge of the outcrop and called Andrew's name again, shouting into the wind. "Andrew! Andrew Killian! If you can hear me, make some noise." Nothing, just the wind and the endless silence. I turned and headed back down the trail, retracing my steps to the fork. This time, I took the east trail, descending into Blackwater Hollow. The name itself gave me an uneasy feeling. I'd heard stories about this area from some of the older rangers. They said it was a place where people got turned around easily, where compasses acted strangely, where you could hear sounds that didn't make sense. I'd always dismissed it as local folklore, the kind of stories that build up around any remote area. But standing at the top of the trail, looking down into the darkness, I felt a prickle of apprehension. The descent was steep and treacherous. The trail was covered in ice under the snow, and I had to move carefully to avoid slipping. The trees closed in again, thick and dark, their branches scraping against each other in the wind. The sound was eerie, like whispers or distant voices. I tried to ignore it and focus on the task at hand, finding Andrew, getting him out of here alive. The trail bottomed out in a narrow valley, following a frozen creek bed. The ice was thick and covered with snow, but I could hear water running underneath, a faint gurgling sound that seemed out of place in the frozen landscape. I followed the creek bed north, shining my light into the trees on either side. The forest here felt different, older. The trees were massive, their trunks as wide as cars, their branches gnarled and twisted. The snow had drifted in strange patterns, piling up in some areas and leaving other areas bare. And then I heard it. A voice, faint, distant, calling for help. I froze. "Andrew?" The voice came again. "Help! Someone help me!" I felt a surge of adrenaline. "Andrew, keep yelling! I'm coming!" I followed the sound, moving off the trail and into the trees. The snow was deeper here, up to my knees in some places. I pushed through it, calling out, "Andrew, I'm Officer Brennan with the Forest Service. Keep making noise." "Help! Please, I'm over here!" The voice was getting closer. I could hear the desperation in it, the fear. I stumbled over a fallen log hidden under the snow, caught myself on a tree trunk, kept moving. My heart was pounding. I was close. I had to be close. "Andrew, I'm almost there. Keep talking." "Help me, I can't get out." I burst into a small clearing and stopped. The voice had come from here. I was sure of it. But the clearing was empty. Just snow and trees and darkness. I spun around, shining my light in every direction. "Andrew, where are you?" No response. The voice had stopped. I stood in the clearing, breathing hard, my pulse racing. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my gut, that instinct that tells you when things aren't right. The silence pressed in around me, heavy and oppressive. The wind had died down, and the snow was falling straight down now, thick flakes that seemed to swallow sound. And then I saw the light, a faint glow flickering between the trees to my left, orange and yellow like firelight. I moved toward it, pushing through the underbrush. The light grew brighter as I approached. I could see it now, definitely a fire, burning in a small clearing ahead. I felt a mix of relief and confusion. Had Andrew started a fire? Was he okay? I stepped into the clearing and stopped dead. There was a fire burning in a ring of stones. But it wasn't Andrew sitting beside it. It was an old man. He looked to be in his 70s, maybe older, with a long gray beard that hung down to his chest. He wore a heavy wool coat, dark and worn, and a fur hat with ear flaps. He sat on a log near the fire, his hands extended toward the flames for warmth. He looked up at me with watery blue eyes and smiled, showing yellowed teeth. "Evening, officer," he said, his voice raspy but friendly. I stared at him, trying to process what I was seeing. "Who are you?" "Name's Rufus," he said. "Been camping out here a few days. Saw you wandering around, thought I'd say hello. Cold night to be out in the woods." "You've been camping? Out here? In this weather?" He chuckled. "I like the cold. Keeps the blood moving, keeps you alive. Been camping in these woods for more years than you've been alive, I'd wager." I looked around the clearing. There was no tent, no gear, no supplies, just the fire and this old man. "Did you hear someone calling for help just now?" He tilted his head, like he was thinking about it. "Can't say I did. Just heard you calling for someone. Andrew, was it?" "Yes. Andrew Killian. He's missing. Went for a hike and didn't come back. I'm looking for him." "That so?" Rufus poked the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling up into the darkness. "Well, I haven't seen anyone. Just me out here." "You're sure? You didn't see anyone on the trails? Hear anything unusual?" "Nope, just the wind and the snow. And you now, of course." Something about him made me uneasy. The way he smiled, the way he didn't seem bothered by my presence, or by the fact that I just appeared out of the woods looking for a missing person. The way the fire burned steady despite the wind and the snow. "What are you doing out here, Rufus?" "Told you, camping. I like the woods. Always have. Spent most of my life in these forests. I know them better than I know my own face. It's Christmas night, and it's well below freezing." He shrugged. "Christmas is just another day when you're my age. And like I said, I don't mind the cold." I keyed my radio. "Carol, I'm about 1.5 miles north of the cabin in Blackwater Hollow. I've encountered a camper. Older gentleman, says his name is Rufus. He hasn't seen the missing person. I'm going to continue searching the area." "Copy that. Be careful down there, Tyler. That's rough terrain." "Will do." I turned back to Rufus. "If you see anyone, or if you hear anyone calling for help, you need to let me know immediately. There's a man missing out here, and he could be in serious danger." Rufus nodded slowly. "I'll keep an eye out. But I wouldn't worry too much if I were you." "Why not?" "These woods have a way of taking care of things. People who are meant to be found, they get found. People who aren't..." He trailed off, poking the fire again. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just an observation. I've been out here a long time, seen a lot of things. Sometimes people wander off, and you never see them again. That's just the way it is." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "I don't have time for philosophy. If you see anything, you let me know." "Will do, officer. You be careful now. Easy to get lost in these woods, especially at night." I left him there and continued deeper into the hollow. The encounter had unsettled me. There was something off about Rufus, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The way he spoke, the way he looked at me, like he knew something I didn't. I pushed the thought aside and focused on finding Andrew. I spent another hour combing the area, calling Andrew's name, checking every gully and ravine, every cluster of trees, every possible place someone might have taken shelter. But I found nothing. No tracks, no gear, no signs of disturbance. It was like Andrew had simply evaporated. The snow was still falling, covering any traces that might have existed. The temperature continued to drop. My toes were getting numb despite my insulated boots, and my fingers ached even in my gloves. At 1:30 in the morning, I made my way back toward the cabin. I needed to check in with Sarah, reassure her that we were doing everything we could, and prepare for a full-scale search once daylight came and search and rescue could deploy. The hike back, up out of Blackwater Hollow, was exhausting. My legs burned from the effort, and my lungs felt raw from breathing the cold air. When I reached the cabin, Sarah was waiting on the deck, wrapped in a blanket. She looked at me with desperate hope, her face illuminated by the porch light. "Did you find him?" "Not yet," I said, climbing the steps. "But search and rescue will be out at first light. We'll have dogs, more personnel, better equipment. We'll find him." Her face crumpled, and she started crying again. I felt helpless. I wanted to tell her that everything would be okay, that Andrew would be fine, but I couldn't make that promise. Not after what I'd seen, not after those tracks that ended in the middle of nowhere. I followed her inside. She made tea, her hands shaking as she poured the hot water. I sat at the kitchen table and filled out a report on my phone, documenting everything I'd observed. The tracks, the clearing, the strange carving, the voice I'd heard, the old man by the fire. I sent the report to Carol, along with the photo of the tree carving. "You should try to get some rest," I told Sarah. "I'll stay nearby and keep searching until the search and rescue team arrives." "I can't rest," she said, her voice hoarse. "Not while he's out there. What if he's hurt? What if he's freezing to death right now? He was dressed for the cold. If he found shelter, if he kept moving, he could be okay. People survive worse than this." But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. 3 hours had turned into over 5 hours now. The temperature was still dropping. Andrew hadn't been prepared for an extended stay in these conditions. The odds were not good. I went back out at 3 in the morning. The snow had slowed to light flurries, but the damage was done. There were now at least 6 inches on the ground, maybe more in the drifts. I retraced my route from earlier, following the Huckleberry Trail, north to the spot where Andrew's tracks had ended. I examined the area again with fresh eyes, looking for anything I might have missed. And that's when I felt it. A vibration, faint, rhythmic, like a distant drumbeat or the thrum of heavy machinery. I knelt down and pressed my hand flat against the snow-covered ground. The vibration was real. I could feel it through my glove, pulsing up through the earth. I stood up and tried to pinpoint the direction. The vibration seemed to be coming from the north, deeper into the forest. I followed it, moving off the trail and into the trees. The sensation grew stronger the further I went. It wasn't loud, wasn't obvious, but it was there. A steady pulse, almost subsonic, felt more than heard. The vibration led me to a dense thicket of rhododendron, their thick, evergreen leaves, heavy with snow. I pushed through the branches, the ice-covered leaves scraping against my coat. On the other side of the thicket, I found something I hadn't expected. A structure, not a cabin, not a shed, something older. It was a stone foundation, partially buried in snow and overgrown with moss and ivy. the remnants of a building that had been abandoned long ago. The walls had mostly collapsed, leaving only the foundation and parts of 2 stone walls standing about waist height. But in the center of the ruin, there was an opening, a staircase made of stone leading down into darkness. The vibration was coming from below. I approached carefully, shining my headlamp down the stairs. They were steep and narrow, covered in ice. The walls were stone, damp and slick, covered in lichen and moss. The air coming up from below was cold, but somehow different. Colder than the air around me, if that was possible. And there was a smell. Damp earth and something else. Something organic and unpleasant. I keyed my radio. "Carol, I've found something. Old stone structure. Looks like ruins of a building. About a mile north of the Killian cabin. There's a staircase leading underground. The vibration I mentioned earlier is coming from down there. I'm going to check it out." There was a pause. "Tyler, maybe you should wait for backup. We don't know what's down there." "If Andrew's down there, he might be hurt. He might not have time to wait." Another pause. "Be careful. Check in every 15 minutes. If I don't hear from you, I'm sending everyone." "Understood." I started down the stairs. Each step was treacherous, the stone slick with ice. I had to move slowly, one hand on the wall for balance. The temperature dropped as I descended. My breath came out in thick clouds, and frost began forming on my scarf and the exposed parts of my face. The walls pressed in close on either side, and the ceiling was low enough that I had to duck in places. After about 30 steps, the staircase ended at a landing. I was maybe 20 feet below ground level. The landing opened into a corridor carved through the bedrock. The walls were rough-hewn stone, and the floor was packed dirt. The vibration was much stronger down here, resonating in my chest, in my bones. It was almost uncomfortable, like standing too close to a subwoofer at a concert. The corridor extended north, disappearing into darkness beyond the reach of my headlamp. I followed it, moving slowly, my hand resting on my sidearm. The air smelled worse down here, a mix of mold and rot, and something chemical. My boots crunched on the dirt floor, the sound echoing off the stone walls. After about 50 feet, the corridor opened into a chamber. It was circular, maybe 20 feet across. The walls were stone, and the floor was smooth dirt, packed hard from age. But what dominated the room was in the center. A hole. Not a well. Not a pit. A hole that seemed to go down forever. I approached it slowly, shining my light into the depths. The beam just disappeared, swallowed by the darkness. I couldn't see the bottom. The vibration was coming from the hole, pulsing up like a heartbeat. I knelt at the edge and looked down. Nothing but darkness, but I could feel something, a presence, like something down there was aware of me, watching me. And then I heard the voice, Andrew's voice, coming from the hole. "Help me, please, I'm down here." My heart jumped into my throat. "Andrew, can you hear me? I'm down here. I can't get out. It's too deep." "How far down are you?" "I don't know. I can't see anything. Please help me. I'm so cold." I pulled my pack off and dug out my rope. I always carried 50 feet of climbing rope in my pack, standard equipment for mountain rescue situations. I tied one end to a support beam that had been set into the stone wall, testing it to make sure it would hold. Then I dropped the other end into the hole, letting the rope unspool as it fell. "Andrew, I'm sending down a rope. Can you see it? Can you reach it?" I can't reach it." "How far down are you?" "I don't know. Too far. Everything's dark. I don't remember how I got here." I pulled the rope back up, all 50 feet of it. He was deeper than that. I keyed my radio. "Carol, I've found the missing person. He's trapped in a hole beneath the structure. I need a rescue team with equipment. Rope, harnesses, lights. He's too far down for me to reach with what I have." "Copy. I'm deploying search and rescue now. Weather's clearing, so we should be able to get a team to you within 45 minutes. Can you maintain contact with the subject?" "I'll try." I called down into the hole. "Andrew, help is on the way. We're going to get you out. Just hold on." "It's so cold down here. I can't feel my hands." "I know. Try to stay calm. Try to stay awake. Keep talking to me." "There's something down here with me." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" "I can hear it, breathing, moving. I can feel it sometimes, brushing against me." "Andrew, you're probably disoriented. You might have hit your head when you fell. There's nothing down there." No, I can hear it. It's real." "Oh God, it's touching me." "Andrew, listen to me. You need to stay calm. Your mind is playing tricks on you. You're in shock. You're hypothermic. Focus on my voice. It's pulling me. It's pulling me deeper. I can feel hands. Oh God, there are hands on me." Andrew, talk to me." There was a sound, a scream, high and panicked, echoing up from the depths. And then silence. Complete, absolute silence. Even the vibration stopped. I called his name over and over, but there was no response. I shone my light into the hole, desperate to see something, anything. But there was only darkness. I stayed at the edge of the hole, calling Andrew's name, until the rescue team arrived at 4:45 in the morning. There were 5 of them, equipped with ropes, harnesses, helmets, lights, and a portable winch system. The team leader was a man named Jackson, a veteran with 20 years of experience in mountain rescue. I briefed him on the situation, and he immediately started setting up the equipment. They lowered one of their team members into the hole, a young woman named Ortiz, who specialized in confined space rescue. She descended slowly, the winch paying out rope at a steady rate. 50 feet, 100 feet, 150, 200. At 240 feet, Ortiz reached the bottom. Her voice came crackling over the radio. "I'm on the bottom. It's a chamber, maybe 10 feet across. Solid rock." Jackson keyed his radio. "Do you see the subject?" There was a pause. "Negative. No sign of anyone down here." "What?" "I'm telling you, there's nothing down here. No body, no gear, no clothing, just bare rock and dirt." "That's impossible," I said, grabbing the radio. "I heard him. He was down there, less than an hour ago." "I don't know what to tell you," Ortiz said. "There's nothing here." They pulled her back up. We stared at each other in confusion. Jackson turned to me. "You're sure you heard someone down there?" "Positive. It was Andrew Killian. He told me he was trapped. He told me he was cold. He said something was down there with him." "Could it have been an echo? Sound traveling through the rock?" "No, it was his voice, coming from the hole." Jackson looked at the hole, then back at me. "Well, he's not down there now." We spent the next 2 hours searching the entire underground complex. The chamber with the hole was just the beginning. There were other corridors branching off, leading to smaller rooms and dead ends. Some of them had old mining equipment, rusted and broken. Pickaxes, shovels, a collapsed ore cart. It was clear that this place had been part of a mining operation at some point, probably in the 1800s. But we found no sign of Andrew Killian. No tracks, no disturbed dirt, no blood, nothing. As dawn broke, we returned to the surface. Sarah was there, brought to the site by Carol. When she saw me emerge from the ruins without Andrew, she collapsed. Carol caught her, held her while she sobbed. I stood there, covered in dirt and exhausted, feeling completely helpless. We organized a full-scale search operation. It lasted 3 days. We had dozens of volunteers, multiple search and rescue teams, helicopters with thermal imaging cameras, and cadaver dogs. We combed every inch of the forest within a 5-mile radius of the cabin. We searched Blackwater Hollow, the ridgelines, the valleys, the creek beds. We went back into the underground complex and mapped every corridor, every chamber. We found nothing.